So yeah, thanks Tess, thanks Darwin for that. Enjoyed your comments. So my name is Ibrahim Alked. I'm the CEO of New Mine. We are a cryptocurrency and blockchain mining company. So I've got a little presentation that I'm going to share just right here. So can you see my screen?
Yes, it could be full screen if possible.
Yeah, no problem. Now we should be full screen. So yeah, so today we're going to be talking about blockchain mining in May 2020 Halving, which is a very important event because it's an event that occurs once every 4 years. And this is brought to you by New Mine. New Mine is a company that has been around since 2016. We do institutional grade mining operations for ASICs and GPUs. We source cheap power, produce firmware and software for the mining ecosystem. And a lot of what we do is education, stuff like this, because mining is a fundamental aspect of the blockchain ecosystem, and without it, the network can't run. So it's very important. I believe that everyone knows about it and is well informed about it. Yeah, you can check out our website if you've got any questions. I'm going to make this short and sweet. I've got around 20 minutes, so I'm just going to cut to the point. So if you guys got any questions, reach out to me on LinkedIn. Happy to speak to anyone. Any questions at all, feel free to do. That's my LinkedIn ID. Okay, so let's do a general market overview. So obviously the traditional markets have been crazy. I mean, recently oil futures have gone negative. Everything, you know, what this pandemic has proven is that during times of crisis, really the financial system can be standing on pillars of sand. So in my opinion, Bitcoin has done a pretty good job. It's floating around the $7,000 mark at the moment, which is pretty solid. And you know, the mining ecosystem is still growing. The hash rate has been growing recently, so people are still plugging in and setting up mining operations, which is great to see. Now, let's talk about what is mining. You know, not everyone is aware of what it is. So mining is done for proof of work coins, such as Bitcoin and Ethereum. And sorry, let's go back. For Bitcoin and Ethereum. And this is a process whereby very powerful computers, essentially supercomputers, validate transactions. And the successful miners, the ones that you know, break down the code, they obtain new crypto as a reward. And this allows a healthy stream of new coins to flow into the network. And some coins, for example, XRP by the company Ripple, are pre-mined. So the only way to obtain them is to buy them. But Bitcoin and Ethereum can be mined. Bitcoin is mined using ASICs. Ethereum is mined using GPU rigs. So types of mining hardware, I just mentioned them briefly. There's ASICs and GPU rigs. The main supplier of ASIC machines is a company known as Bitmain, and the latest model of mining hardware they released is the S19. But we are seeing competitors come into the space recently, one of which is MicroBT. And I think what's going to happen is that over time, these companies are going to start taking a share of Bitmain's market share. ASIC stands for an application-specific integrated circuit. It's essentially a machine that is designed to do one thing and one thing only. For Bitcoin mining, it's you know, Bitcoin ASICs are only designed to mine Bitcoin. Litecoin ASICs are only designed to mine Litecoin. GPU rigs, on the other hand, mine a range of coins. So the same GPU rig can mine Ethereum or Monero or any of the other altcoins. So they're more versatile, but they're not as powerful as the ASICs. So on the left-hand side, we have an ASIC. On the right-hand side, we've got a GPU rig that our company has been selling. These GPU rigs are purpose-built. You can see the cards at the front, and you've got the power supply and the other components at the back. It's very important for air circulation with these machines because they get very hot. They generate, they consume a lot of electricity. They convert a lot of the electricity into heat. So you need to ensure good air circulation, both within the machine and also within the data center that they're running. This is a mining operation, a GPU mining operation of some of the machines we deployed for a client in North Carolina, and we've stacked dozens of these machines next to each other. So the total hash rate. Let's analyze the total hash rate. So as you can see, over the last year, the hash rate has gone up considerably. You can see around March time there was a big drop. And the reason this drop occurred is obviously, so what happened was what we found is that as Bitcoin has been maturing as an asset class, it's been more correlated with the traditional markets. So when, because of the pandemic, the traditional markets tanked, we saw a massive drop in the price of Bitcoin alongside the traditional assets. Now, a lot of the smaller miners, what happened was they couldn't mine profitably anymore. So they had to unplug their machines. And as a result, the hash rate dropped. It was actually, I think, the biggest drop in hash rate in the history of Bitcoin's existence in terms of percent. But you can see it's recovered considerably since then, as Bitcoin's price has been stable around 7,000. Some of those miners have been switching back on. Now, the miners that are struggling during these times are the miners that have more expensive power. The bigger miners, cheaper power, cheaper mining hardware, have it a lot cheaper. The entire industry runs on economies of scale. The more money you have, the bigger the mining operations you can run, and the bigger your profit margins. So it really makes it difficult for small players to compete. What we saw in the 2016 halving, the mining from home no longer became profitable. What we're going to see in the May 2020 halving is that the big players are going to take a bigger share of the market. This is the Ethereum network hash rate. You can see it's gone up considerably since Ethereum was created in 2016. There was a big spike around 2017 time when Ethereum went over $500 and even around $1,000. And then we can see it stabilizing around the 200K mark in terms of total network hash rate. So a lot of people are still doing Ethereum mining, but the issue with GPU rigs is they're harder to maintain and take care of than ASIC. So we're definitely seeing a bigger demand for ASIC mining as opposed to GPU mining. Okay, so factors to consider when mining. As I said, it's all about economies of scale. So the purchase price of the machines, the more money you have, the more machines you can buy, and the cheaper they are, right? So the big manufacturers like Bitmain give you a discount when you buy large quantities of machines. The more you buy, the bigger the discount. Depreciation and machine price, we typically factor in and need to upgrade your machines every 3 to 4 years, because what happens is over time, the computing hardware gets older and new stuff comes onto the market. The same way, new iPhones are more powerful than old iPhones, it's the same with mining equipment. So when you're making mining models to look at profitability, you need to factor in a depreciation of machine price and a reinvestment after 3 to 4 years. Electricity cost. So mining operations are typically deployed in places with cheap electricity. This can be in America, you've got North Carolina and Washington State, they have cheap hydropower. You've got Labrador City in Canada and other places in Canada that has a lot of cheap renewable energy sources. In China, China dominates the mining industry. You get loads of mining operations in China. And in Europe, you've got Iceland and Norway for cheap power. And the cheaper the power, the better, because these machines consume large amounts of electricity. I'd rather drive my car in the UAE, for example, than the UK, because fuel is cheaper over there. It's the same with machines. You want to run your machines where the electricity is going to be the cheapest. Variations in mining difficulty and asset price, we can't factor for this. We don't know how many people are going to plug into the mining infrastructure, and we don't know where Bitcoin's price is going to be. Predicting where Bitcoin's price is going to be in 12 months is like trying to predict what the weather is going to be like this time next year. It just doesn't happen. So, but there's definitely something that's going to impact the profitability of a mining operation. So what are your options if you want to get into mining? You can have 1 or 2 machines at home for fun. You're not going to make a lot of money, not anymore. The mining ecosystem has changed. It's dominated by big players and big mining infrastructure. You can consider cloud mining. The issue with cloud mining is it's not profitable, right? You're better off just buying the crypto, using your fiat to buy crypto as opposed to cloud mining. I don't know anyone that has made a lot of money off cloud mining. The only people that make a lot of money off cloud mining are the people that are selling the mining contracts. The other option is buy your own hardware and get hosted professionally. It's what we do as a company. But we tailor typically to larger institutional grade mining operations. So stuff that's deployed in big data centers or in purpose-built containers. So if someone's looking to run 5 miners, we're not really the best company to go to. But if you're looking to run 100 or 1,000 or 2,000 miners, etc., then that's what NewMine caters for. So the halving is going to be in May 2020. We know this because it's mathematically programmed into Bitcoin. There's been 2 prior halvings. The block reward is the reward that's given out to the network every 10 minutes. In 2012, it was 50. It was in 2012, and the first halving, it went from 50 to 25, and now 2016 went from 25 to 12.5, and now we're going to go from 12.5 to 6.25. So the difference is that with mining Bitcoin, over time, the amount of inflation of Bitcoin into the ecosystem drops. So that's how it really differs to fiat. Governments can keep printing more and more money, and over time, the amount of the purchasing power of your fiat drops. But with Bitcoin, it can go up, potentially because the amount of Bitcoins in circulation or that are added to the network drop. Yeah, so that was what I was discussing. Inflation rate. That's the inflation rate of a monetary base. If you look at the blue, and in the orange or the red, that's the inflation rate of Bitcoin. So over time, as the block reward keeps halving every 4 years, it halves more and more and more. The inflation rate keeps dropping. So Bitcoin has actually been very revolutionary in that aspect, in the purchasing power. I wrote a piece that we've got a blog on our website, newmind.io is our website, and it looks at the historical impact of block halving on Bitcoin's price. But to summarize, what I said in the piece is that what we tend to see is prior to the halving, we have 100% run up in Bitcoin's price. This is when we analyze the last two halvings, and within a 12 to 18 month period, we have a massive surge in Bitcoin's price, which and a new all-time high is set. This doesn't mean this is going to happen again, but this is if we look at history and study it. That's what happened last time. So that can be one way of predicting the future, is looking at historically what happened with Bitcoin's price, but it's not a guarantee, of course. History of Bitcoin halvings. Yes, this is what I covered. So the first halving was in 2012. You can see there was an uptick in price. Second halving was in 2016. But what I will say is that with this third halving, the entire ecosystem is different. You have more institutional money. Bitcoin, everyone has heard of Bitcoin. Even any retail person has heard of Bitcoin at some point, probably when it went and reached 20K. So it's just interesting to kind of see when we overlay halving on Bitcoin's price, what we see. And this is what we see. Again, more of that is covered on our blog if you guys want to have a look. I like to judge Bitcoin by yearly lows, not all-time highs, right? Because all-time highs are usually set during periods of FOMO. Every retail investor wants to get in and become a millionaire overnight. If you look at Bitcoin by its yearly lows since its inception, what we see is that Bitcoin has been going up and up and up in terms of yearly lows. So in 2012, the yearly low that Bitcoin set was $4. If we look at 2015, it was $185. 2013 and 2019, it was setting 3.2 and 3.35K in terms of yearly lows. So I think this is a much better way of analyzing Bitcoin's growth over time. So this might sound crazy. Can Bitcoin hit 100K, right? And it's possible. It's possible. And this is a video by Mark Ross. I haven't got any affiliation with him, but he explains how potentially Bitcoin can reach 100K, right? Every single fiat currency, bar none, has collapsed sooner or later. Gold and silver are the only forms of money that have survived the test of time. Since the time of the Athenians and the Egyptians, these have been true forms of money. And now the internet is 30 years old. So maybe it is time for us to have a digital form of store of value. And Bitcoin may be that store because it was the first one. It has the first mover's advantage. So that's an interesting video if you want to have a look at it. If you have a look at Mark Ross on YouTube, he talks you through it in a very logical sense. There's a lot of very crazy stuff in our industry, but he breaks it down quite nicely. This is a quote by Mike Maloney. I like this guy. He says Bitcoin and gold are on the same team. He's actually releasing a book called Gold, Silver, and Crypto later this year. I've got no affiliation with him again, but I recommend reading this book. I've not read it yet, but it's going to be good. This guy wrote a book about gold and silver and how to invest, and it's one of the best-selling books of all time. And when he found out Bitcoin, he's like, Bitcoin and gold are on the same team. So it's a pretty good sign. He's one of my favorite economists to follow. Bitcoin and gold, although they might be on the same team, they differ in the sense that Bitcoin's mined over time, which I mentioned previously, reduced, whilst the gold mined over time goes up and up and up. And you can see the difference there. So Bitcoin, in that respect, as a store of value, has a advantage over gold. So comparing Bitcoin and gold mining. So one of the points is that people say, is BTC mining, BTC mining bad for the environment? But with most mining operations, they run on renewable energy sources, at least outside of China, like hydropower and sometimes thermal power, and sometimes power manufacturers, they use their surplus energy, and instead of they use running mining operations to increase their profit margins. So I would say it's not bad for the environment outside of China. Okay, gold mining actually consumes 20 to 25 more energy than Bitcoin mining. BTC is far easier to store and transfer than gold. The typical ROI time of large-scale mining operations for Bitcoin can be as short as 9 months, or 9 to 12 months. Gold mining ROI time can be as long as 8 to 10 years. So those are the facts. I'll let you guys make up your own minds. But in a lot of ways, Bitcoin mining has proven time and time again to be more profitable than gold mining. But the issue is that, you know, a lot of people don't understand how Bitcoin mining works. But actually, it's a lot simpler than people think. It's essentially, you know, a virtual form of gold mining, where the more computers you have, the bigger your upside over everyone else. And it's very much an economies of scale. These are purpose-built containers, which are recently hitting the market. We produce them in our company. You can put your mining hardware in them, and you know, you can fit as much as 1 megawatt worth of miners into these mining containers. They're very mobile, very secure, and you can, you know, deploy them anywhere you want. So this is the direction that we've seen the market heading in. There's a lot of data centers that are mining, but also we're seeing these mining containers being built. So the halving of 2020 will make mining more centralized. There's been a lot of articles talking about how Bitcoin mining is very, very centralized. It's a monopoly. A small amount of people run pretty much all the, you know, most of the mining infrastructure. And the next halving is going to push more and more of those smaller miners outside and make it even harder for them to compete. So it's definitely going to be something that's going to make mining going to make mining much more centralized, and there's nothing we can do about it, unfortunately. Talking of mining centralization, this is some of Bitmain's mines. You can see how big they are. The typical person, you know, can't compete with this. These guys can get really cheap machines, really cheap power, and really squash a lot of the smaller competition outside of the market. You know, this thing, mining at home, no longer that profitable. The people that are doing it really are doing it as a form of hobby. So this is a screenshot I took a few days ago. So if you go to bitcoinblockhalf.com, it does a countdown to the halving. It's estimated to be 12th of May 2020. So you can actually watch it as it's happening if anyone cares that much. What I'll say to you, if there's anyone out there that is predicting future price or anything like that, or telling you Bitcoin is going to be worth X amount in the future, right? Anyone can say anything, right? No one substantiates it. You know, if there's 100 predictions from 100 different people, 99 times it's wrong and one person it's right, it's probably because they got lucky. So yes, I personally think Bitcoin is going to be worth more in the future. You know, this is my own opinion, but we don't know how much it's going to be worth, when it's going to be worth what. So be very careful whose opinion you listen to, including mine. Cointelegraph is a good source. They've got a mining subsection for mining news. So that's something if you want to keep up to date with the industry. If you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, feel free to do so. Ibrahim Al-Kurd, if you search my name, come up. If you got any questions, shoot them my way. I don't like to charge people for everything. If you want any sort of advice, I'll do it free of charge. We're looking to really allow the blockchain mining ecosystem to grow. We don't want to charge people for everything that we do. A lot of what we do is consulting free of charge. So yeah, that's it from me. Thank you for your time. If you've got any questions, reach out to me, and I hope this has been useful for you guys. This halving event is going to be, you know, it's going to have a massive impact on Bitcoin. It happens every 4 years, has a massive impact on Bitcoin long term. Whenever it happens, I'm not expecting much to happen when it halves, except that a lot of miners are going to struggle to be profitable. But it's definitely going to have a long-term impact, and it's going to affect the supply of the network. So that's it from me. So I'll pass back to Nadia.
And what are the current trends you see that you could maybe mention in the current environment, how it impacts your industry? Yeah,
so it definitely impacts the models that we're generating in terms of profitability. So we have to factor in the halving when it's going to happen. We have to factor in what's going to happen in terms of the electricity. So obviously, if the amount of supply that's coming into the network every 10 minutes is being halved, then you're going to have to need cheaper and cheaper electricity. So over time, what's going to happen is that the mining hardware is going to have to become better. And on top of that, people are going to have to source cheaper electricity. So it's going to make the sphere very competitive, more centralized, and it's going to be less decentralized. I know people talk about how Bitcoin is decentralized, but actually, if you look at the facts, a lot of the mining operations are run by the same people. A very small proportion of the amount of Bitcoins are held by a small number of people, you know, Satoshi, Winklevoss twins, all these super rich guys. So it's not really as decentralized as people like to think, but it's definitely a revolutionary technology in terms of that it's allowed us to trust people in a decentralized network. So it's definitely food for thought.
Okay. Do you see any of the enterprises in your field changing their business models currently and trying to adjust to the new realities of this pandemic?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I think so. What's happening? What we're doing as a company is we're developing firmware to increase the hash rate of machines and reduce the power consumption. So that's what by doing that we can increase the profitability of the machine. So I think that there's going to be a lot of innovation in the next few years by mining. I know I've got some colleagues that are using liquid immersion systems for cooling. So the space is going to be innovated more and more, and it's great. There's going to be new technology coming in. I think that this is going to make it more competitive and more interesting to be involved in. And we're also seeing a difference in terms of pool share. So pool-in is a pool that's come up recently, and it's taken a big share of the market. And it's only been around for 12 months. So have a look if you want to check it out. I think it's poolin.com for the URL. But yeah, I think it's definitely a space to watch out for. I think. Thank you all for your time, and I hope that this has been useful.